Microsoft shook up the entire games industry when it announced its plans to buy ZeniMax Media for $7.5 billion. Provided Phil Spencer's check doesn't bounce and the US continues to not enforce antitrust law, the acquisition will go down as the second largest in video game history.
It's true. They got Doom, they got Elder Scrolls, they got Fallout. It's been at least 4 years since we've seen a deal of this magnitude. But what does the future hold for all the Bethesda studios and their upcoming IP? Who might Microsoft buy next? And at the core of today's topic, can the legacy of game company buyouts give us any indication as to what to expect for this upcoming console generation?
I don't know. That's Evan, I'm Connor, and this is Insight Gaming.
We go party, hey, hey. We go party.
Today I want to look back at some of the most notable game company acquisitions of all time, partly because I'm curious whether there's another deal that comes even close to the ZeniMax Bethesda acquisition, but also to see if we can use some light analysis and a little acquisition history to speculate about the future of Microsoft Studios games.
Okay, so like greatest hits of major video game company buyouts. I'm into it. I like it. I think it's hip. I think it's cool. I think it's fresh. I think it's what the kids want to see.
It's definitely not going to be boring at all, not even a little bit.
No, I can't think of a better way to spend a Sunday.
Well, a pretty notable element of the ZeniMax acquisition was the $7.5 billion price tag, so it's probably easiest to start with the biggest, or rather, the most expensive acquisitions first. As we said at the top, Microsoft buying ZeniMax Media is the second most expensive game company acquisition in history. So what's the first? This is gonna be a little bit boring, but according to this very convenient wiki article, that'd be Tencent and the purchase of Supercell, makers of Clash of Clans, Boom Beach, and Clash Royale. Tencent paid $8.6 billion to acquire Supercell. Given the Finnish mobile game maker reported $1.5 billion in revenue in 2019, it's safe to say the investment is well on its way to maturity.
You could say that. You could reasonably put that forward as a point of view.
Actually, a lot of these big acquisitions center around mobile gaming. It's easy to see why PC and console owners make up a relatively small group compared to smartphone users. That potential install base is always going to be attractive to investors. On that note, the third most expensive video game acquisition is Activision Blizzard's purchase of King Digital Entertainment, makers of Candy Crush, for $5.9 billion in 2015. Okay, whatever. I know it's all cell phone companies and mobile games and a lot of us. It's boring. Let's move on. Interestingly, Microsoft appears in the top 5 most expensive acquisitions list twice. That's right, it's time to talk about Mojang?
Mayang.
Look, we know in Sweden people say Mojang, in the US people say Mojang. Regardless of how you say it, someone's gonna correct you.
Yes.
Anyways, Microsoft's acquisition of all things Minecraft cost them $2.5 billion in 2014, and it is the first thing I consider when I think of the future of Bethesda's game studios. Instead of locking up Minecraft in a walled garden, they continued to support the game on multiple platforms, including the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4. There are some features that you can only access on Xbox, such as Realms and Realms Plus, but crossplay allows you to play with friends on different platforms. The console version of Minecraft is even across the board. That is incredible, and it gives us hope that the next Doom, Fallout, Elder Scrolls, and even Starfield could also be available on multiple platforms. Yes, for the time being, Starfield is planning for only Xbox and PC, but that could be for a lot of reasons. For example, how much is Sony willing to pay to have Starfield on their new PS5? How generous of a revenue split is Sony going to give Microsoft on copies of Starfield sold? And, all of that stuff gets decided later on, when the game is actually closer to being done.
We're so early, and it could be a timed exclusive too.
In addition to Minecraft multi-platform support, the other notable takeaway from Microsoft's double appearance in the top 5 is it shows how dedicated to games the company has become. Mojang and ZeniMax cost Microsoft $10 billion alone, and that doesn't even address the multitude of smaller studios Microsoft picked up over the last 5 years. Though I think one mega corporation owning all the video game companies is probably a bad thing, I'm hoping Microsoft is planning to invest in these studios long term. Sure, they may have closed shop on studios like Lionhead and Ensemble in the past, and their history with Bungie may be a little bit sordid, but it feels clear that Microsoft's sights are set higher than simply turning a profit on game sales and attachment rates. Remember that Microsoft claimed they see Google and Amazon as their actual competitors, not PlayStation and Nintendo. And the Bethesda acquisition drives that home in the biggest way possible. I mean, you say like, F you money, this is F you money, I think.
This is you money. This is put the check on the table and say, this restaurant is mine now. I'm not tipping you. You're fired.
The consensus is Xbox wants to be the Netflix of gaming, but if that makes PlayStation like HBO and Nintendo like Disney Plus, Microsoft's goal is literally to be everyone else combined. They want to be Netflix and Hulu and Apple TV and even Crunchyroll, and then also show up on Nintendo platforms and Sony platforms as well, or get products from Nintendo and PlayStation, ideally, and put them on the Xbox in some way, shape, or form. And if they can't, well, then they're going to swoop in, pay billions of dollars for exclusivity rights like they did with Bethesda, and then charge their competitors for their privilege of sharing.
Jesus God. They don't want to be like any one company. They just want to be the whole industry.
Anyways, that's probably all I got on the topic. I think we probably exhausted.
You done? You don't want to? There's not anything more. Just let me organize my thoughts. We're doing a top 5 most expensive acquisitions video, and we're not going to touch the 5th. Do you want to talk about it like at all? Do you want? Come on,
right,
Evan.
Okay. I guess we should round out the number. That number 5 spot goes to Facebook Gaming and their purchase of Oculus VR for $2 billion in 2014, and I think that's still when Palmer Luckey was still attached. Oof. Some different days. And of course, recently it's been mandated that you have to use a Facebook account to log into Oculus headsets for them to work. Definitely a good example of what not to do.
Yes, that's so like my conservative aunt can yell at me while I'm playing Super Hot.
Oh geez.
What's the shakedown? How's this work?
Can you imagine, just playing Beat Saber, and then all of a sudden it's just your Facebook timeline just gets updated with...
Oh no. Well, if I could smash it with the lightsabers, that actually might be kind of fun. That's a good mod.
You'd be like, no, Uncle Phil, sagebrush does not cure coronavirus.
So that's the top 5. What's just below the surface?
You know what? When we talk about video game acquisitions, I think there's definitely some to get excited about, and definitely some companies that have done it right. For example, Bandai Namco, which is currently the 7th most expensive gaming acquisition at $1.7 billion in 2005, is a really good example of how things went right, I think. It feels like it's been a lot longer than that. Like, I don't think of them as different entities anymore. Like, I remember, Tekken 2 and Soul being strictly just Namco. They weren't Bandai Namco games, but now when you think of those things, they definitely are. And of course, they've executed on things like Dragon Ball FighterZ. They have basically an entire empire of cool anime games, indie games, and just sprawling RPGs. I mean, they even helped Nintendo with the latest Smash game, or Smash 4 before it became Smash Ultimate. It's kind of the bones for what Smash Ultimate became, and it's kind of exemplary in a lot of ways. They took the licensing of Bandai and the game creators at Namco, and they just really gelled together in probably one of the best possible ways I think that we've seen in games. We probably don't talk about Bandai and Namco enough, just in general.
I don't think of them ever as having been separate entities. They just really gel so well.
Another honorable mention, which I think is maybe a good example of what not to do for the Microsoft Bethesda deal, is the EA BioWare, and we forget this often, but BioWare/Pandemic acquisition for $775 million. With a suite of proven games between BioWare and Pandemic, they weren't unlike Bethesda. Unfortunately, EA kind of ran things into the ground when they moved things around and gave a number of other EA studios the BioWare name before just kind of shutting almost all of them down completely. At one point, there was 8, which was reduced down to Accord 3, BioWare Austin, BioWare Edmonton, and BioWare Montreal, but Montreal was absorbed into EA Motive back in 2017. So not a great look for EA or BioWare, really, where you have this parent company, EA, who's supposed to be in charge of helping, BioWare, this kind of rock star studio, make, the best Mass Effect games they possibly can. And, we got Mass Effect Andromeda at the end of the trilogy. And yeah, I guess we're just all crossing our fingers for the next Dragon Age. And quickly, my last honorable mention has to go to EA, and their acquisition of Respawn. I mean, they got the creators of Call of Duty, the founders, the creators who made one of the biggest gaming franchises of all time, got burnt on some payments that they were owed from Activision. They didn't get their holiday bonus checks, and some other discrepancies they had. An Infinity Ward basically imploded. Jason West, Vincent Zampella were escorted off the premises, and that allowed EA to come in and scoop them up. And while Respawn hasn't made the next big gaming franchise, we did get Titanfall 2, and that is arguably one of the best first-person shooters ever made. I will fight anyone over that.
I mean, Apex Legends has a very solid base. People love Fallen Order. Like, they are doing good stuff. And they've got some other really exciting things coming down the pipe. I really hope EA doesn't this up. I really hope they don't. I love Titanfall 2.
Yeah, and they made Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. They've got another Star Wars game, apparently, which is probably the sequel to that, in the mix. You know, they're busy over there.
So Evan, lightning round, take us home. Who will Microsoft buy next? Oh,
gosh.
Sage. Oh, Oracle. Who will Microsoft purchase next?
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell the Bethesda deal really through, when we were thinking about studios that Microsoft might buy, we were thinking more in lines of like what they've done in the past, Double Fine and the studio that made Hellblade and things like that.
And people that made We Happy Few. I mean, that's
totally.
That was kind of in line with their sort of style.
Yeah, exactly. And they did just spend $7.5 billion, so maybe they will, scoop up a few more smaller devs. I think Japanese developers still seem like a good bet since, that's always been kind of the narrative that that Xboxes don't sell as well in Japan or in Asia. In which case I would say like a Platinum Games, Konami licenses, if they came in and bought up all the Konami licenses, that might be really cool. Capcom would be a pretty good choice. But I think like the big question is what else is missing from their portfolio that would make as big of a splash as the Bethesda deal. I don't know. And on the Japanese developer tick, I think Sega/Atlas might be a cool pickup. Persona, people love Persona.
Mm-hmm. They do.
But yeah, that's what would be my best guesses, I think.
Okay. What about Sony? The other side of the coin.
Yeah, I think that after Microsoft purchased Bethesda and ZeniMax, I think it's the big question is like, okay, now Sony needs to buy somebody quick to, retaliate or have as equally impressive as a library. And for them to do that, I think they'd have to buy, big, obviously a publisher, not just like a game studio. They'd have to buy like a Square Enix or a Take-Two Interactive, Bandai Namco even, which we talked about before, like EA or Activision. I don't know, but I just don't see it happening because Sony doesn't have that much capital to kind of just spend on their video game division, right? On their PlayStation division, probably.
Especially at the eve of a generation when they've already manufactured all these consoles at a loss, I'm sure, or a very small margin. I mean, like they're probably not working with a lot of bandwidth right now.
Yeah, and I can't imagine it's probably no contest. That's what makes the Microsoft Bethesda deal feel like such a big move. On top of the surprise of it, like none of us saw it coming, I feel like.
Oh my God, no. Sony probably a few years ago probably could have made a bigger move, but they were investing in their studios, which was smart because they've made some incredible games. Anyway, that was a little exhausting. So many company names and numbers and math and one company becoming another company. I need to sit down for a little bit. I need to go for a schwitz if I can find a sauna.
Totally, I know. I'm sorry. Maybe we should have done that Hades is secretly making you good at Dota feature instead that I pitched.
Maybe.
That would have been nice.
Maybe we still will. Perhaps. All that and more on Insight Gaming. Is it actually worth it, what we got? The answer varies depending on who you ask, but the collection does have some huge flaws, one of them particularly egregious, that almost everyone has been agreeing on. With that, we're gonna dive into those a bit today. I'm Connor.
And I'm Caden.
This is Insight Gaming.
We gon' party. Hey, hey. We gon' party.